If you hate memorizing chess openings but love attacking chess, this is for you. I'll show you one simple setup for white that you can use against the Scandinavian, the Caro-Kann and the French, and it can win you a lot of quick games. Say your opponent is playing the Scandinavian defense against you, and I will show you in a moment how to use the same setup against the French and the Caro-Kann. You play d4. You ignore his idea completely, because now your central pawn is still hanging, therefore black will definitely capture it. And now knight to c3, you develop a knight and attack his central pawn, black develops and defends it, and then you play pawn to f3. Putting pressure to his central pawn, black happily trades it off, and yes, at the moment black is up a pawn, but that is the whole point of the gambit, and most of the gambits aim to get advantage in activity and to launch your attack quickly at the cost of one just little pawn that is not that critical. Now, black might play something like bishop g4, but actually it doesn't even matter because your overall plan will stay the same. You'll develop the bishop to this active position, you will castle kingside, and notice because there is no pawn right here on f2, once you've castled, your rook will get this juicy file for its attack. So that's basically the entire setup. Now, let's say they go bishop g4, so now let's go move by move so that you know exactly how to play it. Might feel annoying at first, but you play h3 and kick it off. So here black will have to make a decision of what to do with this bishop. Most of the time they will take the easiest solution. I will later show you what to do if they try to, retreat back to h5. Most of the time they will take you recapture. Now your queen is active. It also hits this pawn on b7 and thus indirectly the rook. Therefore, that's already the first thing that some of your opponents will actually overlook. What can they do now? Covering with the knight is actually not a good idea because then you've got bishop b5 and that already overpowers black entirely. Now both the bishop and the queen attacks this poor pony on c6. Also, this pawn can come forward and join the party, and that is not good for black. So let's take it back. c6 is a better option, where they block this diagonal by using their pawns, but then you just continue your development. Your opponent doesn't know it yet, but a very aggressive plan is about to be unleashed onto him. So first you develop this bishop because it also protects the central pawn, just in case, so that black doesn't capture it. And then after black plays whatever, you develop this bishop to this active square d3. And then again, black develops his pieces anyhow, however he likes it to do, and then you castle kingside. Not only this puts your king to the safe square, even more importantly, that adds your rook into the attack. Also a pretty cool thing, your opponent might trade on c3, they do, but again, we don't really care. They castle kingside, looks like their position is safe, like they're doing everything right. And funnily enough, they don't even realize that their position is already lost, basically. Just because you've got this file, you've got the queen right there on the king side, and you've got two bishops pointing all toward the king side, which makes your attack very easy to unfold and very effective, very hard for black to deal with. I'll show you an example idea and a couple, common scenarios here. Of course, in your games it will be slightly differently, but the overall plan will be the same. So let's say here I can go bishop g5. One really strong idea because it pins the knight and also attacks it together with your queen and rook. Black will of course protect it with their knight. Now queen to g3, also a very common idea to bring your queen closer to your opponent's king and to take aim at their king. Now this is already pretty annoying. Some bishop h6 thing is coming. Moreover, sometimes your opponents will play h6 themselves, not even realizing that your bishop is not going back. It's going to capture the pawn because this pawn on g7 is pinned down to the king. It cannot move, and therefore that is already like a complete devastation of black. If they try moving this pawn forward, you could capture this rook, but you don't even need to. Bishop takes g6. Or just win the game on the spot. You see how dangerous your attack is, and it makes sense because all your pieces attack this single undefended king, which makes it so easy. Say your opponent does not blunder anything. He just removes his king out of this opposition, and you play queen to h4. Another very common idea, bringing your queen to h4, because from here, together with light square bishop, you take aim at this pawn on h7. And if your opponent does nothing special, you're going to sacrifice your rook here on f6 and win the game. Okay, what if they play h6? There are a lot of juicy sacrifices that can be played here, but in this case, white play rook takes f6, a really beautiful idea. Now, the pawn cannot take the bishop because it's pinned. Black cannot take the rook this way because then queen takes h6 will lead to a checkmate on the next move. So knight takes f6 is forced, and now white just brings a spare rook into the game, and black is totally overloaded with all these tactical aggressive ideas. and like try to run away once again with the king, but now white sacrifices the rook for the second time on the same square, f6. And then after black recaptures, white can take here or here. In both cases, he's winning the game easily. Black is totally defenseless after whatever he does. There's queen g4, and then finishing the game off. Now let's see how to turn the French defense into French fries. Initially, you pretend to be playing classical chess, but then you play pawn to f3, which takes your opponent out of his comfort zone. Now, it's not really the French defense anymore. It is the same setup, basically the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. And notice that in this case, it's kind of even better for you. Because of his pawn on e6, he can now bring the bishop out, and it has to stay there on this passive position, while your plan remains to be exactly the same. Again, that's the beauty of this thing. You play same moves. You castle kingside, which also activates your rook simultaneously. Black plays whatever, and then queen to e1 is a very common maneuver throughout all of these positions, because you want to bring your queen, your strongest attacking force, onto the king side so that it joins the party. Black plays something, let's say they want to develop the bishop that way, then queen to h4. We have seen this motif before, that enables your queen together with a light square bishop to take aim at his king. But right now black is not worried yet because his knight is covering the square, therefore black may continue his development. Now bishop g5. Now your threat is real. You want to take the knight, and then play queen takes h7 checkmate. Black's got to do something about this. Let's say knight to d7. They add one more knight, one more defender. And now you've got actually several very common, also tactical and attacking patterns. And I want to show them just so that you know, again, different ways for you to finish the game off. One of them is bishop takes h7. This is something that black overlooked. They thought that this square is guarded by the knight, but what they overlooked is that now, without this knight on f6, there's bishop takes e7. And you're already winning the exchange, you're destroying his castling, and you keep attacking. By the way, if you want to find moves like this yourself, I explain how strong players do it in my free masterclass. But I also want to show you one more attacking pattern, because this one is also super common, knight to e5. Your opponent may be playing something different, but your attacking plan will be the same. So knight to e5 does two good things for you. First, it adds the knight into the attack. Secondly, it opens up this file for your rook. If black ever captures, no problem. If they capture, you recapture with a pawn, and that pawn will be kicking out this knight from f6, also good for you. Now, if black does something else, let's say, I don't know, whatever irrelevant move on the queen side, then you can take here, you can take here, and you actually finish the game with this sacrifice, which eliminates the defender of this square h7, and then you finish the game with queen takes h7 because of your bishop. That is actually a checkmate. Again, this may seem like you've got so many different tactical opportunities here, but actually does make sense. If you just look back at how many attacking pieces you have on the king side, that just makes perfect sense, right? You totally overpower black there. In some of your games, your opponent will sooner or later try to play h6, because that attacks your dark square bishop and also eliminates the threat to this pawn on h7. But when they play h6, in most of the time, it's totally good for you to just sacrifice your bishop there, because you get two pawns for a piece, plus this king on g8 is now totally exposed, and you are not yet threatening queen to h7 because he can capture it, but it's very easy to get rid of this knight. You can take it, let's say, take on d7, you can take it with a rook, it can go knight g4, one way or the other. It's very easy to get rid of this knight from f6, and then queen to h7 would indeed be a checkmate. Moreover, in this case, if he tries to reroute the bishop to defend his king, you also have another beautiful tactic. It is bishop to h7. You deflect the knight from f6, which enables rook takes f7. We talked about this before. This rook from f1 always adds more firepower to your attack. And here it just pays off. Now I threaten queen takes h7. If he defends it anyhow, then there is queen to g7 mate. Against the Caro-Kann defense, it is basically the same plan, but on top of that, there is a way to spice it up. Because here initially you use the very same pawn sacrifice, but on the next turn, usually, we used to develop our bishop here to take aim at your opponent's future castling. But in this case, against the Caro-Kann defense, I love putting the bishop right here to c4. It is also an active position of the bishop, but also it prevents black from playing this very tempting move bishop g4, because now it looks like this pin restricts your knight and your knight cannot move, but it's actually not the case. You can play something like knight to e5, a paradoxical move, letting them grab your queen, but then finishing the game off. This tactic prevents your opponent from developing his bishop actively, and otherwise they'll often end up playing pawn to e6, which is an okay move, but at the same time this bishop is now crying back there on c8. It totally has no prospects there. And then white castles kingside, your plan is the same. You use the same queen transfer to the kingside. Then you can also bring your bishop back to the right diagonal, where it supports your attack. You bring the queen to h4, putting pressure to your opponent's castling. If they ever play g6, let's talk about this as well, because we haven't talked about this move so far, but of course some of your opponents will do this. Now indeed your light square bishop is a bit restricted, but on the opposite side, your dark square bishop actually now has some really juicy squares right there, because all those dark squares are now weak around his king, and you can take advantage of this. Bishop g5 is a nice way to put pressure down here to this knight and the bishop. For instance, the knight cannot easily move away because now that'll simply drop the bishop on e7, right? Therefore, this pressure is uncomfortable. And if, let's say, your opponent tries to protect that bishop on e8, then you continue playing your usual attacking moves, knight to e5, bring the knight into play, and also opening up this file for your rook. If black ever trades on e5, good for you, because now your pawn joins the party and also kicks this knight out of f6. Let's say it moves somewhere, and now, don't judge a rook by its cover. Boom, rook takes f7. He expected you to trade on e7, but instead you just finish the game off. This pulls the king off, and now queen takes h7 counts with a check. You've also got the other rook can come here, but you don't even need to because bishop h6 is a checkmate in one. There's another question that I know you may have throughout these different variations is, what if they go bishop g4, pinning your knight, and you don't have any of those pin-tastical moves like knight to e5, and instead you play pawn to h3, the usual move. Now, so far we talked about the fact that if they trade, good for you, you continue with your usual development. That is something that we have already covered. But what if instead your opponent just retreats the bishop back to h5 and maintains the pin? What do you do then? Well, then you flip the switch and you use this bishop on h5 to facilitate your own attack. You start marching with these pawns forward, and now you can either continue with a knight to e5 or with pawn to h4, and you keep pressuring that bishop on g6. h5 is going to actually capture it, just trap it right there on g6 because your knight controls this square, so h5 is a real threat. Of course, they can provide an escape square, but you keep attacking knight to e5, and they can't really allow you to trade here because that would disrupt their pawn structure and make their king very weak if they allow this trade. Therefore, they'll likely to go back with the bishop. But notice, you keep gaining temples, more and more temples for your attack. Bishop c4 now creates a new threat, and bishop takes f7 would actually be a checkmate. They definitely need to stop it. Now pawn to e6, queen e2, and you just have a winning attack here because you've got such a strong pressure. Like, all your pieces are very active. You can also bring the rook to the f file, you know, together with the knight, it'll hit the pawn on f7. If they ever bring the knight out, you can play g5, but even better, if they bring the knight or the other knight, you've got knight takes f7. Sort of a very advanced scholar's mate here after king takes and queen takes e6. And a few other helpful notes. If you really love this aggressive setup, then you actually can get to the same position while starting with a queen's pawn move, pawn to d4. And now you want to play e4 and grab the center. If they play d5, the queen's gambit, the usual thing, now you play pawn e4 and it is the same position, right? Let's compare this. So if we come back and you start with pawn to e4, now d5 is, let's say, the Scandinavian defense, you go d4, and you can notice that it is the exact same position. Therefore, if you really love this thing, you can push it even if your opponent, you know, didn't want to play it at all. All right. Then the other question is, what if your opponent defends this pawn on e4, not with a knight, but with a pawn from f5? Even better for you, because your plan remains to be more or less the same. You still undermine this pawn, and then you get this leading development, but now your opponent has this weird pawn on f5, which weakens all these squares around his king. And therefore, it's just better. Bishop c4. Now you can develop the bishop to this diagonal, because now it will prevent him from castling, and you also potentially attack all these weaknesses around his king. And then on the next turn, you will probably start attacking this weak pawn on e6 right away. Notice that it is weak because there is no pawn on f7 that used to support it. But now with the pawn on f5, this pawn has no defense, and you can start attacking it right away. Black is already in trouble. Let's say they try to defend it, you can attack it once again. And now black is totally defenseless. Like, they cannot block because the rook not only attacks the pawn, but it also pins it. You can just capture it, right? And the pawn is pinned. That'll be just bad for them. If instead they decide to give up the pawn, it's not just the pawn, because after that you keep attacking. And here rook takes c6, you hit the queen, and then it sets it up for various discovered checks. And if the queen moves, you can play something like rook takes d6, and here your opponent will figure it out that they can't recapture because their king is actually in check. If you want to get better at finding attacking moves yourself, I explain the entire thinking process in my free masterclass. You'll find the link down below. And if you want to see the 10 simple rules that Magnus Carlsen uses to dominate his opponents, you can watch this video next. It's based on one of his most instructive and beautiful games.